Now, China conducted a second day of military drills around Taiwan. According to Beijing, it completed all designated tasks, including practicing hitting key ports and energy sites. China claims democratically run Taiwan as its own, and the surprise exercises were even criticized by Washington as intimidation tactics. We can now bring in our former Hong Kong correspondent, Oliver Farry, for more. Oliver, is this an escalation from China?
Well, it's an escalation in the same sense that every time China carries out these exercises in the vicinity of Taiwan, it's an escalation. It certainly does not mean an invasion is around the corner, despite the opinion of many Western analysts that Xi Jinping has instructed the military to retake Taiwan by 2027. But this is certainly a surge and an intensification. There has been live fire claimed by the PLA. Now, the Taiwan side says that they have no report of that themselves. But the exercises are also very precise, as you said, targeting Taiwanese ports and also simulating a blockade. Now, they come in the wake of footage being leaked recently of China's amphibious landing barges. We can see them here, which are intended to overcome the logistical obstacles of getting large numbers of troops onshore in Taiwan, to which I'll be returning shortly. Now, the European Union, Japan and the US have condemned the exercises, but Taiwan is far more likely to be just alerted by them rather than alarmed. This is par for the course for them.
Now, there has been speculation mounting for some time that over Chinese invasion, is it a possibility, an imminent possibility?
Well, any speculation about a possible Chinese invasion, and this is usually omitted by people in the West, has to be conditioned by the challenges that it entails. The first of these are logistical. Weather and maritime conditions mean that you could only really do an amphibious landing in May or June, and even then, it's far from straightforward. The actual terrain of Taiwan, as we can see here, is another thing. The name Taiwan literally means the terraced bay. That comes from a large curtain of cliffs, mainly on the east coast, but also part of the west coast as well, and it's both cliffs and inhospitable coast. And the waters around the more approachable coast are incredibly shallow, about less than 15 metres deep in parts. So you're going to have to, any ships will have to anchor probably at least 2 kilometres offshore, meaning troops would have to be moved in on landing crafts, very much like was done on the Normandy beaches for D-Day, albeit on a much larger scale, and those will be in heavily mined waters as well. Then there are the difficulties in occupying an island that is mostly mountainous, covered in thick jungle, and which will be likely heavily sabotaged. So the Chinese government will also have to consider the domestic response as well, that this could go very, very well, but more than likely it's going to be very, very costly, particularly if soldiers start coming home in body bags very soon.
And has the Trump administration's foreign policy, do you think it might push China to possibly go ahead and invade Taiwan?
Well, a new chaotic world ushered in by the Trump administration could possibly do that. I think an invasion itself is somewhere off yet, but there are conditions in Europe that could embolden China to move. One of those would be a war beyond the current war in Ukraine, something it would have to be fairly cataclysmic. They might see the West distracted and seize the opportunity to invade. Now, with regard to Trump, it's unclear that he would actually be any more accommodating to China than the Biden administration would have been. There's been no message, for instance, to the US's allies in Asia, similar to the ones delivered to NATO members in Europe about the US potentially disengaging. The US has also condemned these exercises. There's no reason to believe that they would simply, even under Trump, sit by and let China invade. And the global economic fallout as well, which would be considerable, would also be enough to give China pause. Now, a clearer possibility is a blockade. And of course, China in these exercises contained a blockade. This would be an attempt to put Taiwan's economy in a chokehold. It's not a non-military response. It would have to be underwritten with force, and would also carry repercussions for China. But it would be a lot less risky than an invasion. Cyber warfare is another possibility where you could actually target Taiwan's intelligence, cyber infrastructure and communications. Now, make no mistake, China is preparing for an invasion, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's imminent. They will ensure, however, that when the conditions are right, they will be ready. But it's also worth pointing out that Taiwan will be ready too. The Taiwanese may not be able to resist a Chinese invasion indefinitely, but they could definitely make it very, very costly for Beijing.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.